What's up, guys? Brady Figuel here, coming at you with a discography ranking. As Chevelle is dropping their new album, Brightness Blasphemy, on Friday, it is time for the pre-album discography ranking, as I have been doing with bands that I follow ahead of their new album, which I will be reviewing. So if you're interested in Chevelle, and maybe there are other bands similar to Chevelle that you also follow or are a fan of that also happen to be releasing new albums soon, or maybe the following week even, feel free to hit the subscribe button to not just catch my Chevelle review, but catch my discography rankings and album reviews for similar bands. Before we start, though, I will have some exclusions on this ranking. For one, I'm not going to be including any of the B-side collections, which might be a given. But I'm also, and this might ruffle some feathers, will not be including the independently released debut album, Point Number 1, from 1999. Because to me, it doesn't sound like the Chevelle that we know and love. There may be some elements and some foundations of what would come, but to me, Chevelle, their discography starts at Wonder What's Next in 2002. Feel free to comment if you disagree, but that's how I will be doing this ranking. This is also a discography ranking that, as far as the Chevelle fan base, if you're a hardcore Chevelle fan, you might get triggered by my ranking. So please comment below how you would rank Chevelle's albums. This is just my opinion as opposed to my reviews, where I try to keep things a little more objective. These discography rankings are solely on my personal tastes. So starting off strong with number 8, This Type of Thinking, their second major labeled album. Don't get fooled, though, this album may be at the bottom, but I don't think it's bad. I just think all the other albums are better, if that makes sense. It just, to me, is a little underwhelming. I know it's maybe technically their third album, but I think this record is the definition of sophomore slump, if you want to use major label albums only. I know The Clincher is one of their most well-known songs, but the song just bores me. To me, it just has no dynamics to it, which says a lot considering it's literally the intro track on the album. Chevelle will have no problem later on in this ranking coming out right out of the gate swinging with some killer songs to start their albums. So in context, this song it really falls flat. Get Some, track 2, kind of is a similar vibe to me. This album, I think the word flat is a really good kind of descriptive term for the album as a whole. The big single, Vitamin R, Leading Us Along, to me, and I've always thought this since I first heard it, kind of just sounds like they tried to do The Red again, which is obviously their biggest song to date off of Wonder What's Next prior. Again, that might ruffle some feathers, but play both songs in a row, and you'll see that Vitamin R is literally the exact same guitar riff as The Red, just in a faster tempo. The heavier songs on this album to me just are a bit sluggish. Musically, this album isn't really that explorative, especially coming off of Wonder What's Next. There are a few songs that I think are decent on here. I mean, the moody kind of ballad type track, Panic Prone, I enjoy. There's also another Know It All, which is more kind of, it's heavier, it's a bit more double bass driven. And I've never liked the term nu metal for Chevelle, but on a track like Tug of War, the riffing in that song is very nu metal, and it did at least bring something different to the table. And the last 2 tracks are okay, but they kind of drag, they're a bit long. Again, overall, there's really nothing bad on this album. It's just, to me, it's just kind of the most underwhelming and the most lukewarm execution of Chevelle's sound. Number 7, I got the follow-up to This Type of Thinking, Vena Sera. A little bit better, for sure, but it's kind of the same issue for me. There isn't a whole lot on this album that really hooks me or keeps me coming back. Songs like Brainiac and Well Enough Alone, which I believe are both singles, they don't have much hooks to them. They're energetic for sure, but there's nothing really that makes me want to listen to these songs again after I hear them. Saturdays later in the album, I'd clump into that group as well. Again, there's 3 songs that I would say I enjoy on here. There's Anti-Saint, which is a great opener, a much better opener than The Clincher is, in my opinion. The Fad is this really murky type track that I enjoy, and then Midnight to Midnight has some really catchy, bouncy riffs that I like. But again, the rest of the songs on here to me are just really, really middle ground. Not bad, just a bit boring. I mean, Safer Waters is okay. It has some cool, atmospheric clean guitars in the verses, I guess. Humanoid and the closer In Debt to the Earth are fine. This album, again, is just kind of underwhelming, especially in context given what came not only before, but what will come after this album. The North Corridor comes in at number 6. Definitely a step up from the first two albums. At this point, I had been following the band, so I remember when this album dropped. But listening to it then and listening back to it now, it kind of comes off to me as like a watered-down version of La Gárgola, the album that it followed up. There are significantly more songs on this album that I enjoy. I mean, Got Burned is one of the catchiest songs the band has ever put out. You also have songs like Last Days with that absolute beast of a main groove, and Enemies with that pounding snare drum driving the song. Those are both, again, just super infectious songs. Rivers has this cool intro that, oddly enough, kind of gives me like opera vibes. So that's a really interesting song. And the opening track, Door to Door Cannibals, has that kind of horror vibe. And overall, the song is just really, really murky and sludgy. And there's also Young Wicked, which is very, very double bass heavy and maybe one of the heaviest tracks Chevelle has put out. But again, that's like half the album, maybe slightly more, and the rest of the songs are just so forgettable. I mean, Warhol Showbiz and Punchline and the absolute snooze fest of A Closer Shot from a Cannon. These songs just have nothing to offer to me. There's nothing that makes me want to listen to them again. Same with the lead single, Joyride. I remember enjoying it at the time, but listening back, it's one of those songs that the guitar work in particular is just so simplistic. It comes off a bit caveman. Again, definitely a step up from my bottom two picks here, but still, it was definitely also a drop down from La Gárgola, which I'll talk about shortly. At number 5, I got their most recent album, Niratias, which also stands for Nothing is Real and This is a Simulation. I gotta say that even though this album isn't really towards the top of the list still, I respect the fuck out of this album. What this album is Chevelle taking a bold leap into the most creative and experimental territory of their careers. I remember instantly picking up from that when I first heard the lead single Self-Destructor with its explorative song structure and that piano outro that I thought was great, and Pete's more higher register vocals, which he wasn't really doing much on the more recent albums. And I was really glad to see that became a theme throughout the whole record. You obviously have tracks like the really chunky kind of pseudo opener on here, So Long Mother Earth, which just has this massive chorus. And you have other songs on here that take the straight up Chevelle sound and add these experimental flourishes in there. Tracks like Pistol Star, which has a bit of like a Tool influence, and just overall has this kind of like eerie vibe to it that I enjoy. Also Endlessly, which is a bit more atmospheric. Remember When is a song that, even though it's probably maybe the most melodic song on here, arguably, it still feels like new territory for Chevelle, and the melodies on this song are very pleasant to listen to. I love the, again, I guess, pseudo closing track on this album, Ghost and Razor. It's so bassy. It's got some really catchy grooves to it that I love. The issue I have with this album is all the interludes and then the spoken word track at the end. To me, this just really derailed the album's momentum, and it made it feel a lot less cohesive, and that there was just a bit too much filler in there. These songs don't really add much to the album. I feel like if they wanted to put these kind of ideas in, they could have put like maybe shorter intros or outros on some of the songs without having entire tracks like this just filling up space on the track list. And some of the full-length tracks, like Peach with its really simplistic caveman riffing once again, and Endlessly kind of drags a little bit. Also Mars Simula don't really do a whole lot for me, but what puts this album above the other three that I talked about is, again, just its experimentalism. I respect the shit out of that. All right, moving on to number 4, and this is where I'm going to lose everybody, so feel free to leave as many angry comments as you want. Wonder what's next. Good album for sure. I really still don't have a whole lot of negative to say for this record, because now that we're at the number 4 pick, we're getting into the albums that I really do enjoy. And I pretty much enjoyed every song up until the last 2 tracks. And even with El Diablo is okay, it's just a bit long and kind of drags. And I'll be honest, One Lonely Visitor, the ballad on here, it's pretty rough. Pete's vocals aren't quite there. But I enjoy every other song on here. I mean, the dark, hard-hitting intro, Family System is great. Comfortable Liar kind of keeps that pace going with more of like a mid-tempo bounce to it. This still, to date, might be Chevelle's heaviest album. The title track is super catchy and heavy. Forfeit is just super chunky. It has this really heavy outro that I like, with Pete just yelling the word forfeit. There's also the really sludgy track Grab Thy Hand that I enjoy. listening to all these albums, it's kind of no wonder that this type of thinking in Vena Sera felt a bit underwhelming, because Chevelle really did, with their major label debut, kick things off with a bang. Number 3 is Sci-Fi Crimes. This is probably the album that was maybe the first shift in sound for Chevelle, because to me, it chops off a sizable portion of the metal influence in favor of more of just a straight up like alternative rock sound. But it really works for them on here. The songs are significantly more catchy. There's a lot more hooks on this album than there were on the previous 2. Again, like right off the bat, the grooves on the 2 first songs, Sleep Apnea and Mexican Sun, are just, again, so catchy. And you got the choruses on songs like Jars and This Circus, and also Fell Into Your Shoes has some really catchy vocal cadences. The more somber melodic tracks on here I really love. Shameful Metaphors is great. And same with Highland's Apparition. These songs just have some genuinely moody and emotive melodies, which up until this point, Chevelle honestly didn't really execute that well, if I'm being honest, like you just heard me talk about. These are the songs, and this album is the album where they really perfected their melodic influence in particular. But I will single out Roswell's Spell as probably the most metal track on here. It just has that stomping groove in the intro, and it's probably the most straight-up signature Chevelle sound, at least at that point, that we got on this record. I think for my taste, the fact that the band did eliminate a lot of the metal influence on this record might have made it a little less dynamic and maybe a little bit more stylistically one-dimensional, if you will. But as opposed to every album I've talked about so far, there isn't really a single track that I think weighs the record down. This is just one of their most consistent albums all the way through, and it's also a bit experimental, taking off a lot of that metal, like I said. So again, I respect this album, but I still don't think it's quite their best. Hats Off to the Bowl is at number 2. Stylistically, this album to me sounds like they took Sci-Fi Crimes and kind of used that same idea, but threw in a lot more of that metal influence, which is probably why I like it slightly better. I mean, the opening 1-2 punch of fucking Face to the Floor and Same Old Trip is just crushing. The grooves in this song are just out of this world. Some of the catchiest grooves maybe I've ever heard, easily in Chevelle's catalog. I just love these first 2 songs, and what a way to start this album. And there's a lot more to love from there. I mean, Ruse, the next track, has a really cool dark vibe to it, and then the Meddler kind of follows that up too with some murky bass grooves that I like. There's also a bit more of an emphasis on mood with this album. Like Pinata is a song that's overall like a bit upbeat sonically, but it still has like this underlying darkness that you can hear in it. And I love kind of getting those notions and hearing that as a listener. The dark ballad type track on your Envy and also Revenge later in the album are again songs that really crank up the emotive ideas, and they're just really atmospheric, and they're really sonically rich. And then there's a great ending to this album too, with again the ballad type track Prima Donna, which has some great vocal melodies. There's also the hard-hitting but also emotionally dynamic Clones to close the record. The title track is super catchy, and listen to these albums, especially chronologically. To me, this album really hyped me up because it was like, wow, Chevelle's really picking up steam from here. And coming in at number 1, my favorite Chevelle album is La Gárgola. I absolutely love this album. The opening track, Ouija Board, is my favorite Chevelle song, period. It just beautifully sets up this album with its evil vibe to it, and just the horror influence and just the darkness. I cannot express enough how much I love this fucking song. And the thing about this album is that every other song, to me, is fucking awesome. They all have their independent identities. No 2 tracks feel like they're the same. Whether it's the catchy, hookier songs like An Island, the lead single Take Out the Gunman, which again just has this really dark, kind of mid-tempo pace to it that I love, and Jawbreaker 2 is super catchy. That horror influence that I brought up on a Ouija Board comes back in full force on tracks like Hunter Eats Hunter and The Damned and Under the Knife, which just have this darkness to them. I love the moods of these songs. Choking Game is a song that really sees them crank up the atmospherics. I mean, that kind of eerie guitar line in the background just has this coldness to it. It just, again, it's a similar mood, but done in a slightly different style, and it really fucking works. The closing track, Twinge, is my favorite Chevelle ballad, if you want to call it that. It's a bit more Deftones influence in just its atmosphere and some of its lyrics. This is an absolutely gorgeous song. Literally my only complaint on the entire album is that the true ballad, I guess, One Ocean, although it is a song that I enjoy just with its dramatics and its nice melodies, I do think it's a little bit long and it does drag. Aside from that, I have literally no criticisms for this album. I fucking love it. To me, this album is one of the standards, if not the standard, for alternative metal, modern or classic. So yeah, that is my Chevelle discography ranking. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I would love to hear in the comments how you would rank Chevelle's albums, or if you have any responses to anything I've talked about in this video. Remember to, again, please hit the subscribe button. I will be doing a full-length review for Bright as Blasphemy shortly after it drops on Friday. And until next time, thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.